short history on the life of Goya. Francisco Goya was born on March 30th, 1946, in Fuendetodo, Spain. Goya began his studies in Zaragoza, Spain, before traveling around working in Madrid under his future brother-in-law. In 1771, he went to work in Rome before returning to Zaragoza for his first major commission to paint frescoes in the cathedral, which he would return to periodically for the next 10 years. Goya began his career in court in 1775 when he began painting the first of a series of 60 cartoons, which he was still working on up until 1792 for the Royal Tapestry Factory of Santa Barbara. Here he was influenced by Anton Raphael Mengs, and later even more so by Diego Velázquez. Goya was elected a member of the Royal Academy of San Fernando, Madrid, with his admission piece being A Christ on the Cross, composed in the manner of Mengs, yet painted in the manner of Velázquez. In 1775, Goya was appointed as deputy director of painting at the Academy, and in the following year he became painter to the King Charles III. Here on he began painting court officials and aristocrats in traditional 18th century poses. Influence from Velázquez's court portraits was clearly seen. Charles III died just months before the outbreak of the French Revolution. This ended the comparatively prosperous times in which Goya matured. It wasn't until patronage under the new king, Charles IV, that Goya was elevated again to court painter and most successful and fashionable artist in Spain. Goya was said to have acknowledged three masters later in his life, being Velázquez, Rembrandt, and nature. Rembrandt's etchings were a clear source of inspiration for his later drawings and etchings. Velázquez's paintings directed Goya to the study of nature and realism. Continuing on the history of his life, in 1792 Goya was left permanently deaf by a disease. This led him to take a new turn with his art, specifically in his non-commissioned art. This new style was more critical and imaginative, being open to his own expression rather than just the practices of those he emulated. These drawings were reminiscent of caricatures. He published his first set in 1794 with the finishing of The Madhouse, a scene Goya saw in Zaragoza. He submitted these works with a cover letter saying, "I have succeeded in making observations for which there is normally no opportunity in commissioned works, which gives no scope for fantasy and invention." In 1795, Goya was elevated to the director of the Academy, though he had to resign 2 years later due to health issues. In 1799, Goya published Los Caprichos, a collection of 80 etchings where he attacked political, social, and religious abuses with caricature. He masterfully used the recently developed technique of aquatint for tonal effects, which gave Los Caprichos intense beauty, and it was a major achievement in engraving history. This collection's themes were described by Goya as being the extravagances and follies common to all society, and were shortly withdrawn from sale due to important people being recognized in his work. A few months later, he was made first court painter. Later, he was threatened by the Inquisition, and in 1803, he gave the plates to Los Caprichos to the king in exchange for a pension for his son. Goya was at the height of his official career, and the king and queen of Spain were forced to abdicate. Napoleon's brother Joseph shortly took the throne. Goya retained his position and painted French and Spanish generals, and in 1912 he was painted a portrait of the Duke of Wellington. It was only in 1863 that Goya's The Disasters of War was finally published, where his drawings during the end of the war showed the horrors he saw in dramatic composition. Goya was pardoned in 1814 by Ferdinand VII after his restoration for having served the French king. Goya painted the 2nd of May 1808 and the 3rd of May 1808 to commemorate the popular insurrection in Madrid. They were monumental in scale. These inspired many later artists such as Edouard Manet. Many paintings going forward evoked the personality of the cruel tyrant, who drove many of Goya's friends and himself into exile. Many of his religious compositions in this period suggest sincere devotion, greater than any of his earlier work. The block paintings, which decorated his country house in the Quinta del Sordo, 1820-1823, and Los Proverbios, or Los Disparates, which were etchings made about the same time, expressionist nightmare visions that seemed to show cynicism, pessimism, and despair.